Hello and welcome back to the Football Fellowship podcast. My name is Mevin,
And my name is Toby.
and finally we have some football to talk about. Game week 1 of the Premier League has almost finished. Have you found the footy, Tobes?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to have it back. It feels like the last 7 or 8 weekends, Saturday, 3 p.m., twiddling your thumbs, waiting to watch some football. So it's really good to have it back. We've had a crazy transfer window so far. Some really good fixtures for opening fixtures, I'd say. Some big clashes. And at the same time as the Women's World Cup is coming to an end, semi-finals this week, which we're looking forward to, as England are in there against Australia. Should be a good game.
Do you think they're going to win it?
I don't know, because they've been playing not great, to be honest, England.
Yeah.
We've got some good results. I think they've only really had that one good game against China, and the others have seemed to almost scrape through. But in international football, that gets you the results. And it was the same with the men at the Euros sometimes, maybe not playing the best, playing pretty defensive, but got through. So, we've got that to look forward to. We've had a great weekend this week. And what about yourself? What have you been most excited to look forward to?
Yeah, I think I have just been most excited to just kind of get the transfer window behind us, because it feels like it's been going on for ages and it feels like a lot's happened, maybe more so than previous transfer windows. And I also think there's been a lot of money splashed about. And it's kind of been completely unpredictable. You know, you think to yourself, oh, this is a logical thing for a team to do, and they go out and do the complete opposite.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit random, in all honesty. And the fact is, now that we've had almost a whole weekend of games, teams are going to be like, okay, we're a bit short in this area, and they're going to be going out and maybe getting some more panic buys as well. Got to think about, you still got the whole loan market to go as well, because once the permanent transfers are done, you're going to see a lot of teams, I think especially in the lower end, try and get some players on loan to fill that two domestic and two international field. So I think there's still going to be a lot to be done, but I'm just excited to talk about football and not worry about transfers as much. And leave that in our rear view window.
Yeah, not worry about predicting the games and actually reviewing them once they've happened. So.
Yeah, and it's actually funny because the first game had a lot of transfer talk leading up to it with Moises Caicedo and in the Liverpool-Chelsea derby.
Yeah, the Caicedo derby.
Yeah, which was interesting because it's weird. It's such a big first game fixture for both teams, for Liverpool and Chelsea. 1-1 it ended up. And when the fixtures came out, neither team wanted this game to be first. I mean, you want a nice, easy game, preferably at home. And this was the complete opposite. This was against your rival for arguably the top four, which both teams are going for. And it didn't help when Thursday night, Friday morning, there's all this back and forth with Caicedo, because Liverpool were trying to hijack the Chelsea deal, and then Chelsea were trying to get it back. Caicedo said, Klopp actually came out at his press conference and said that that he was allowed to say that Liverpool made a bid. Normally, that's quite huge. Normally, manager comes out and they say, right, I can't talk about a player from another club. It's disrespectful. I wouldn't want to do it.
Until it's all confirmed.
Exactly. Until you know you're in a confident position. And that's what Liverpool fans really hyped up about it. And then Caicedo comes out and says he only wants to go to Chelsea because he wants to stay loyal. And that's kind of like a killer blow to Liverpool fans. But then, because there was a tension already, because you want your season to get off to a good start, and then all the stuff were going back and forth with Liverpool and Chelsea, the game had a bit of like added edge going into it, especially with it being Pochettino's first game as Chelsea manager, being at home at Stamford Bridge. It was, it was really tense actually, I thought. And it actually started off being a crazy game, completely end to end. Both teams deciding that, we want Caicedo more than you. Let's go out and show him how much we need him, because they're just attack versus attack in the first half, and they're just completely mental. Chelsea had next year of 1.35 and Liverpool had next year of 1.28. But both teams are going out there and attacking, and like they were playing caution to the wind. No one was tracking runners in midfield. Both sets of players were just going out and kind of just having fun, really. It's actually a really good way to end the Sunday, because both teams were just going at it. And obviously, in the end, Liverpool got in front. Mo Salah with a fantastic assist after well-worked play to Luis Diaz with a lovely finish, sliding in. And from there, it looked like Liverpool were going to kick on. But actually, in fact, it was all Chelsea, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. That first half, like you said, was pretty crazy. It was just attack from both sides all over the place. And I think a large part of that was probably, I don't think either team could have predicted the other team before the game. I think with Chelsea, with so many new signings, not knowing whether they were playing a 3-back, a 4-back, and Nkunku out injured, who was going to step in to that role. Obviously, they played the game with a 3-back, James and Chilwell as the wing-backs. And the same for Liverpool. I don't think many knew exactly what their midfield would be, whether Trent would be inverting, overlapping. Even the front three, we didn't know whether it was going to be Núñez, Jota, or Gakpo. Gakpo ends up playing midfield. I don't think many really would have predicted that. Yeah, as you said, Liverpool got off to a really strong start. They had a lot of really good transitions, a lot of good counter-attacks. Not even counters in a way, because it wasn't much Chelsea possession. It was more just moving it really quick, moving up the field and creating some good chances. But then following that, after Salah had his goal ruled out, Liverpool's second for offside. Chelsea really, I think that was the sign they were like, right, we need to get more of a hold of this game, especially whilst being at home. Start playing the ball, start using the ball a lot more. And it was then the Chilwell assist to Disasi. That was it.
Yeah.
From the headed across, got the goal, and then they got their second, which again that was ruled out as well. It's almost, I think it was a few minutes after that, and they really stepped it up. And once the crowd got going, it was a lot more of a contest.
Yeah, fantasy football manager was screaming everywhere. Yeah. Salah disallowed goal, Chilwell disallowed goal. Yeah. They were fuming. But yeah, honestly, it was so weird because, like you said, that was the perfect wake-up call. And then all of a sudden, Chelsea were just amazing for the rest of the game because they were really on the front foot, attacking really well. I actually thought playing 3 at the back was a massive curveball because we've seen them play 4 at the back for the majority of pre-season. So I think actually Trent Alexander-Arnold came out after the game and said the team was surprised about it, but they coped really well. But then Chilwell and James were actually so attacking. I actually thought Andy Robertson looked really poor in that game. Defensively, he was really struggling. And in fact, when Mudryk came on later in the game, I think for Sterling, he went to the right-hand side, not the left, because that's what having the most success. And Chilwell and James were absolutely phenomenal. I mean, arguably the 2 best wing-backs in the Prem, especially in that position when they're more attacking, because you need to be playing 3 at the back and be at the top of the league. You need wing-backs who are going to be world-class attacking, but also solid defensively and have the legs to get up and down the pitch. And they are those. The massive, massive shame was they both went off injured.
Yeah.
Which goes to show that, that's probably why Chelsea haven't been hitting the heights and why they really struggled without them last season. I think it was only 6 games last season which they started together. And already in the first game of the season, they've both gone off. So that just goes to show how important those 2 are. They brought in a bit of depth. Malo Gusta came on for Reece James and Kukurea came on for Ben Chilwell, but they're not the same quality. It's really not. It could be interesting to see next week if Ian Matson gets to go, what formation they can play. So they can play 4 at the back.
I think that's the thing with those 2 injured. They are being such good wing backs. Will they replace wing backs and stay with the 3 back, or will they think we're not going to get as much attacking quality out of the replacements that we'll go back to a 4 back and try and be even a little bit more defensive in their fullbacks? It'll be interesting to see that.
Yeah, I think especially Alex Disasi, because he put in not only his goal, but he actually put in a really monstrous, solid defensive performance, in which I think he's actually thrown a spanner into the works. And now we'll see what Pochettino has to do, because I think there's an argument you could still play 3 at the back with those 3, but then there's 2 wing backs that are going to be of less of a high quality, arguably. So, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. I also just wanted to touch on Enzo Fernandez, because I thought he absolutely ran the game.
Yeah, that second half, all of their attacks were pretty much starting from him, really.
Because especially alongside Conor Gallagher, there's no real defensive presence in there, which is why both teams really want Caicedo. And I think if Caicedo comes in and plays alongside Fernandez, you can play as more of a bit of an 8, regardless if they play 3 at the back and they play the 2 in midfield, or if it's those 2 and maybe an attacking number 10 like a Chukwuemeka, who's kind of playing out on the left in this game. But I think he absolutely dominated the game. I've got some stats on him here. He had 119 touches, 2 key passes, and he absolutely ran the show. He was everywhere in the second half, conducting the midfield, and Liverpool couldn't get anywhere near him, especially I think for Liverpool without that defensive midfielder who looks like he's not going to be Caicedo now. No one could really get close to him, and he was just popping the ball left and right. And I think to stop Chelsea, you're going to have to stop Enzo Fernandez going forward. And I think teams are going to have to look at him as like a real target, because he came in January, did okay, not like amazing, but he just struggled, especially with the turmoil. I mean, he was on his, I think, 2nd manager at that point. I mean, most of the team were on the 3rd. And then he really need this season, and from the first game, he really demonstrated how good a player he is.
Yeah.
Did you make similar thoughts of him?
Yeah, 100%. He looked like that 100 million plus midfielder that they signed for in January. I think it was interesting because I think in that first half an hour, I wouldn't say he was struggling, but he wasn't getting maybe on the ball as much as he should have been. And I think it was actually McAllister for me who shone in that first half an hour. He's played that deep lying playmaker, number 6, obviously not defensive 6, but a playmaking 6 for Brighton for a few games, whether that's alongside Caicedo or in replacement of Caicedo. And I think against the lower teams, McAllister can play that 6 quite comfortably for Liverpool. and create a lot of moves, which he did. He's got such a good range of passing on him. He's a decent carrier as well. But I think once Liverpool started to sit back when Chelsea increased, McAllister didn't step out of the game but had nowhere near as much impact as he did, and it was Enzo Fernandez who had the chance to shine. Once Chelsea got the momentum, got on the ball, they were just looking for him out the defence from the wing-backs, looking it in, and he was the one really making the moves for them.
Yeah, and arguably Liverpool's best players in that game, as a result of Chelsea attacking so well, were Alisson, who made 4 saves, and some of them were really big chances, especially from the likes of Ben Chilwell. I think one from Nicholas Jackson as well. And actually Virgil van Dijk, who had to make 10 clearances that game.
Wow.
Which goes to show just like how under the cosh Liverpool were, especially in that second half. But I want to talk about Nicholas Jackson, because for someone who's come in from Villarreal, obviously there was a lot of talk about Chelsea needing a number 9, and obviously they got in Nkunku as well, who can play there, but he's obviously, unfortunately, he's out injured at the moment. But he's come in and he did really well, I thought, in that game. He had 4 shots in total, 2 on target, 2 off target. He didn't get a goal, the one he needed in the end, but I thought it was a really positive performance, and one where you can hang your hat on him for Chelsea going forward.
Yeah, I think he's a really interesting player, because when I've seen bits of him in pre-season and at Villarreal, he seemed very much like a last man player, and he had some really good chances for that in this game as well when Chelsea were breaking in the transition. Really quick, really strong. He had that really good chance against Konate where he completely outmuscled him. Konate is a strong, quick defender. But he also did a lot of, not dropping right off, but a lot of good link-up play. Really good movement and created some good chances for himself. It was just that final finish that was missing today. But I think he will definitely be their starting number 9 going forward. I can see him getting a decent amount of goals this year. He looked really good.
Yeah, he looked really good. And especially, like I said, with Nkunku out injured, he's got the time now. If Chelsea don't go out and buy a number 9, which they might do, you never know.
Yeah.
But he's got the time now to make the position his own. And I think he will, because he looks like a really good player. And I almost feel a bit foolish, actually, to not know how good of a player he was at Villarreal, because he kind of came out of left wing for me. So he's actually really blown me away and impressed me. But did you see his potential handball?
I did. I'm not convinced it was a penalty. I don't think it was. It's that rule where they say if it makes your body bigger, and it seemed like it might have done by like an inch. I think maybe it was one of those where you're anticipating the touch before, and he did seem to be moving his hand away. So for me, probably not. I think one of those could go either way, but if it was me making the call, I'd say no.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I did think to myself maybe that could be given, but also I had my red tinted glasses on. So if you say it probably wasn't, then I'll go with you on that. But did you also see Mo Salah's reaction to getting subbed off?
Yeah, he was absolutely fuming. The wrist tape was straight off, throwing it all over the pitch.
It was hilarious seeing it, because every time he took a bit of his wrist tape off, the Chelsea fans kept on cheering, like, way! And then he did it about 3 or 4 times, and then every time he was just egging them on even more. I find it a bit petulant, but also I did understand, because of the fact that obviously he's got this thing about scoring in every opening game of the season for Liverpool, but really he was also our most attacking outlet, and I know that diminished a little bit in the second half, especially when we were really struggling under the cosh, but it was him. But I do just think that to make that reaction to Harvey Elliott, who was coming on, it doesn't bode well. It doesn't show off, like, it doesn't give off good energy,
No.
especially when you've lost Henderson, you've lost Milner, you've lost your leaders in the dressing room, and now you've got Mo Salah doing this. It kind of doesn't. You want someone to be on the bench to be like, Mo, cut it out, but there's no one really on the bench to do that for him.
Yeah, and he has had the few seasons of being like the main man, which I think he wants to be the best player for Liverpool in a good way. He wants to be the person who wins it for the team, and maybe he's a bit too used to being maybe Liverpool's best attacking player. Maybe playing sort of too many games, too many minutes, and not used to being subbed in a game where you're drawing against a top side. But as you say, it's being part of a team and being part of an attacking unit. You all have to have respect for each other and believe that whoever's coming on for you can score and get the winning goal just as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So before we move on, did you learn anything about either side that you didn't before going into the game?
Apart from seeing some of Chelsea's players that I might not have seen much before, like Disasi and Chukwuemeka, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be much of an indicator for the rest of the season, to be
No,
honest,
you not.
because I think
Yeah.
it depends where. Well, Caicedo is going to be joining Chelsea by the sounds of it. It depends where Lavia is going to go. If Liverpool sign any more midfielders, is Trent going to be playing in the same way as he did against Chelsea? Are Chelsea going to be playing back? I feel like there's actually probably more questions following this game. Maybe learn some more about the players, but maybe not so much about the teams, I would say. I think we could see over the next 3 or 4 weeks, both of those teams still trying to find their style of play and their system.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I think if anything, it's made me think of Chelsea slightly more positively than I did, because seeing how they played, I was actually really impressed with them. Except for the fact, obviously, James and Joe got injured. If they can get them fit and play them a bit more, and I think we might be saying that about a few players, but
Yeah.
those two especially are world class on the day. So if they can get them fit, then I think they might actually be, with no Europe, an outside chance for top 4. And if they start off well, they might actually do all right.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. But from challenging for top 4 to potentially challenging the league, we have Arsenal versus Nottingham Forest. Do you want to take us away?
Yeah, it was a good start to the game, as normal. I think over the last season we have started games really well, started really high energy and really pushed teams, and we got a nice early goal from Nketiah. It was really good play from Martinelli. Took it past 2 players and did... I don't even know what you'd call it. It was like a roulette into a back heel pass.
Yeah.
That was disgusting. I feel like I did not see videos of that on like Instagram afterwards enough. It was insanely skillful. Yeah, and then we got our second goal, which was... I can't even remember who scored the second goal for us.
Saka, the worldie.
Saka, yeah, how could I forget that?
Yeah.
There's a beautiful goal into the top corner, curled it in, and we seemed to be on the top in the first sort of 30, 40 minutes with this new system that Arteta seemed to be trying out with Partey as a right back. Having a look at his touch map and watching the game, he was inverting occasionally, but he was still on the outside as well. It seemed to be when he was inverting, it was so that Odegaard could come out a bit wider and link up with Saka and just drag a player across when we were building from the back. And then once we got it a bit further forward, he would sort of stay and travel into the midfield a little bit more. I'm not sure if I was a fan, to be honest. It felt like we were definitely missing someone to help out Saka on the outside. Odegaard sitting on the inside. And I think we did miss Ben White doing those overlapping runs, which we saw quite a lot of last year. It was good to see Rice and Havertz play together. I think both had decent games. I wouldn't say either were outstanding, but they were both solid in that first half, especially decent. Havertz still, I think, needs a little bit more time to gel with the attacking players. I think that cohesion amongst the attacking unit might not be there just yet. And yeah, it was over 70% possession for Arsenal. A decent start, but then once we got that second goal, it's happened quite a lot in the last sort of 20, 25 games for us. When we've been 2-0 up, we've really started to drop back, and that's when I'd say Nottingham Forest came back into the game, really.
Yeah. I thought Nottingham Forest, they tried for a lot of the first half, but they huffed and puffed without really doing anything. But it's really the back end of the game where, like you said, Arsenal took the foot off the gas and they really shone. I thought Anthony Elanga looked electric coming off the bench for a team who were desperately crying out for a bit more depth. To be able to bring on Elanga and Taiwo Awoniyi, who ended up getting the goal in the end, I mean, it showed that hopefully Forest for themselves are moving in the right direction, because his pace on that counter-attack was electric. I know there were some shouts that, Havertz might have got potentially a bit of a head and maybe the game should have been stopped, but I thought it was fair enough. I thought he was acting a bit. But to see the pace that Elanga was going at, because I think Saka was trying to run back as well, and it's always harder when you're running towards your own goal, but the fact that Elanga would just had him on toast, and the strength from Taiwo Awoniyi, he was not slow either in that counter-attack to just burst past and get the goal. I think it was one Nottingham Forest I think deserved, because I think without creating too much, they weren't completely blown out of the game by Arsenal. I mean, they have an XG of 1.18, which is more than Arsenal's of 0.83.
Mm-hmm.
So they did have some good chances. Also thought, Steve Cooper at the end of the game was talking about potential Declan Rice handball. I think the ball came in from a corner, and Willy Bolly tried to get his head on it, and Declan Rice kind of had his arms in there mid-motion. But I think it's one where, because of a lot of handballs been given recently, people have gone a bit over the top with it. But I think the ball travelled such a short distance. I just don't think it was worth it. But then actually in the last 5 minutes, Arsenal were really on the ropes, especially in extra time. Elanga again running down the wing, and I think Morgan Gibbs-White had a shot in the end. He was stretching, and the ball went miles over the bar in the end. But it really, Forest showed that they have something about them, and it's kind of one where I'm kind of upset they didn't go for it a bit sooner. I can understand because you're playing against Arsenal, who have gone run Man City really close for the league, and you want to show them a bit of respect. But actually, compared to Arsenal's first game of last year when they played Crystal Palace away, and I think it was a 2-0 victory, and you absolutely dominated Palace and showed like defensive solidarity like really well, and you were very resolute. I think actually you were there to be got at if Forest decided they wanted to go up that level. They were extremely conservative with how they lined up. I mean, now when he was on the bench, and they went with Morgan Gibbs-White and Brendan Johnson to try and go on the break. I mean, obviously Brendan Johnson had that chance really early on the counter attack. Really. Yeah, I mean, he should have scored, and I think they'll be fine going forward, Forest. But I think for Arsenal, most importantly, just get the 3 points and move on.
Yeah, it was, like you've said, it was Awoniyi and Elanga coming on, which made the difference. I think maybe if they started with Awoniyi and gone for it, they could have done, because they seemed to sit back really early. I think he had a bit of a pre-season knock, Awoniyi, so I think that might be why maybe he didn't start. Definitely next game I can see him being a starter, because he was their most dangerous player by a long way.
And they've got Sheffield United at home next game, so they need to try and win that game.
Yeah, definitely. It was after that first sort of half an hour with Arsenal, it seemed like we had some creative problems. We had the classic Arsenal donut, as they call it, for quite a while, where our players were almost lined up in a circle going around the box. So where it's just being passed around the circle, going from left, crossed in, low ball in, striker's missing, it's coming back out to the right, and it's just recycled, and it's just going round and round and round. We didn't really create many clear-cut chances, I would say. Whether that was because of the slight system change or the slight personnel change, I'm not too sure. I'm still not too sure what the cause of that was. I think part of it might have been we didn't get our wingers isolated very much. Saka and Martinelli, besides Saka's great goal and Martinelli's assist, they were the only two times I would say that they really had time to try and attack some of their players, despite Arteta bringing in Partey to help Saka with that. We only had 4 out of 12 dribbles completed. 4 dribbles completed for wingers of that quality who love to take people on is very low. I think we probably will need to play a little bit better going forward if we want to be getting 3 points comfortably, because as you said, it didn't feel too comfortable at times.
No, but I do think we've got to remember, obviously, you've had a couple of injuries as well. So, like, Gabriel Jesus not being there. I mean, Havertz played in the Community Shield. He was now playing in midfield with Nketiah up front. Obviously, you've had Gabriel, who's picked up a bit of a knock, but he's coming back into it.
Yeah.
And then you had Partey playing at right back and then Ben White centre back. So even though you had similar personnel, they were still playing out of position.
Yeah.
So the chemistry wasn't quite there. I do understand what Arteta was trying to do with Partey at right back. I just don't feel like it's executed that well.
Yeah,
because
carry on. No.
Well, I was going to say there was a few clips I saw on social media which had Odegaard and Saka on that right hand side, like you said, but they needed to make a switch or get the ball to them quicker, and it just wasn't there.
Yeah, it's like you said, I think it could have worked well, but I think it probably works. Obviously, it works better on the left when we have Zinchenko, but he has been injured. I think White could have done that job that Partey did. I think he can play inverted pretty well, and because Gabriel came on, so I don't think he was super. Couldn't have been that bad of a knock. It would be. I would going for now. Timber's probably injured as well. It would probably be, I think, maybe Tomiyasu at left back with Saliba and Gabriel, and then Ben White playing that potentially inverted right back role, which I think would suit us a little bit better than Partey there.
Does it worry you, the fact that you've signed all these players, but there already a couple have got injured?
It is a little worrying, but I think it's the fullbacks is sort of the position where it is the worry. We've still obviously got Tierney, but he's obviously a completely different player. He likes to play on the outside as opposed to inverted. But I hope it won't have to get to the point where we are struggling for players in these positions. We have to change the system because we have been playing really well in it. And I think that could also be a problem for our striker position. I don't think Nketiah can play the Jesus role at all. He's a completely different style of forward. He wants to be on that last man, getting on crosses and low balls into the box, whereas Jesus is obviously going to be dropping a bit deeper. And even though I would rather have Havertz playing in that left centre mid long term when Jesus is there, I think he probably suits the striker position for now while Jesus is out a little bit better. Yeah, it was a okay performance from Arsenal. Still a little bit to build on, integrate those players into a bit more, and I think we should keep playing as well as we did last year.
Yeah, and I think just finally on Nottingham Forest, I think they'll be fine this season, and I think mainly defensively they'll be fine. I mean, coming against an Arsenal team, it's going to always be a challenge away from home first game season. Obviously, got Sheffield United at home next game, and hopefully Tyroni's fit so he can start that game. You've got Morgan Gibbs White, Ben Johnson. When with Elanga coming off the bench, I think that was one real massive positive to take from that game. If he can come on and stretch the play, and then even deputise from Brendan Johnson in some games, I think that could be really good going forward. And I think just that middle of the park is just solid, isn't it? Because you've got Bolly, Worrell, and McKenna all experienced in the middle, perfectly fine. And then your Aurier, Mangala, Yates, Danilo, and Aina for the midfield 5 or 3 and the 2 wing backs, if you want to say it like that. I think they're all pretty good. I think they're all pretty solid. And I think Steve Cooper, I think that was the best thing that the Nottingham Forest owners did last year, was keep him in charge, because now you can build on that, hopefully. So I think they'll be fine, Nottingham Forest. And like I said, I think Arsenal just needed the 3 points at the end of the day.
Yeah, as much as saying that maybe we weren't quite up to speed yet in Arsenal, it was a good performance from Forest. They defended well. I think it was just that first half they couldn't get out as much because we were pressing really well. And once our fitness or stamina had started to drop and the press had dropped, they really started to play out a bit more, and they looked really good and they looked strong. And I think they should be fine. I think if they can defend as well as they did against Arsenal, and when they get the opportunity to come out like they did and attack like they did, I think they could put up some really good performances this year.
Yeah, if they can get someone to be a backup to Tyrone, because he has had a couple of injury issues. He was out for like 3 months last season, and now we're already struggling a little bit coming back into the season. Obviously, plenty more games to go, only 1 game gone. But if they can find someone else to play alongside him, if need be, or when he's not fit to play instead of him, then I think that would be like a real confidence boost to the squad and the fans.
Yeah, I'd like to see maybe. I still think Johnson might be better suited to the wing, and I think maybe playing him alongside Owen and then having a replacement for Owen when needed would probably be best for them, maybe. But
yeah, Nottingham Forest fans, let us know what you think.
Yeah.
So now moving on to Newcastle 5, Aston Villa 1.
Yeah, shocking result, really. I don't think anyone expected Newcastle to win by that sort of margin.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's arguably the most surprising result of the week.
For sure.
Not the fact that, just like you said, Newcastle won, but just the margin of it as well. Because every time I was getting a notification on my phone of getting the fact that Newcastle scored again and again and again, this was really surprising because everyone tipped Aston Villa to have a good season as well, and I think they will. But I think it's just credit to Newcastle because they were just that amazing. 3.14 XG compared to 1.77, and it's the fact that I think more than anything else, just the way they were playing, they were so fluid in attack and so solid in defense that it really, it's really surprised me because, again, this was a really good Aston Villa team. Everyone's tipped them to do really well. But it kind of made me rethink slightly about the fact that everyone's put them kind of a bit outside the top 4. And obviously they have very difficult fixtures. They've got the Champions League to come up as well. But, they've got this performance in them. And you know what? I shouldn't have doubted them, I think, as much. And they're already making me doubt them. But just to go through it, I think Tonali, what a signing, what a player.
Yeah.
People have been saying on Twitter, or X, sorry, I should say it, as the best debut they've seen. Maybe wouldn't go that far, but it was incredible. And he was incredible. I mean, getting the first goal, it was really poor defending. The fact that Leon Bailey just didn't track Anthony Gordon, and the fact that Boubacar Kamara was ball watching and didn't even watch Tonali just run into the box, and he got a fantastic goal. But I think the fact that Alexander Isak as well, he is a fantastic player and he's only going to get better. And he was probably the first signing that Newcastle had, which they probably spent over and beyond what they would have done beforehand. But the fact that he has got a bit of Thierry Henry about him. Maybe he won't hit the heights, but stylistically, the way he plays, he is very similar. And then the fact that that they can bring on the likes of Callum Wilson, who gets a goal, Harvey Barnes, who gets a goal and an assist, and their front and the first 11 still be amazing. I think they've had some really good additions in key areas, and strength to strength really.
I think it was a bit of a worry for me that I think may have dropped them off if they weren't starting Alexander Isak, because he is real quality. We saw a lot of that last season, but then some games he still wasn't starting over Wilson, whether they were sort of tactical decisions, I can imagine they were, or because Howe rates Wilson more than Isak, I don't know. But I was really happy to see him start, and I think him starting the first game of the season is quite a good precedent for the season to go on. And Wilson is still a great player, but I think he has more of an impact off the bench than he does starting, especially in a side like Newcastle. Another player who really stood out for me was Anthony Gordon. I think he looked as good as he has done for the last year or so. He had those, I think it was like 3 or 4 months when he was at Everton that were really exciting, and we really saw a player there that can become a player who can play for England and definitely be in that squad as well. He had a really great under-21 Euros player of the tournament, and it seems like he has got his drive back, and he was picking up the ball, really aggressive, really driving at people, which was great to see. And as you've said, Tonali seems to have fit into that midfield three so well. They had really good chemistry, it seemed, bouncing balls off each other, really dominating Aston Villa in the midfield. And I think the first half, that was where Newcastle were able to dominate Villa, was in that midfield because of Tonali.
Yeah, I mean, and what a midfield three it is. Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali, and Joe Linton. And, you could arguably put those three in any other midfield in the league, and then the drop-off would be the same, better, or the drop-off wouldn't be that much at all. And that's actually really impressive, because I think getting your midfield sorted was really smart for Newcastle, because they're young as well. So they're only going to get better with age. And I think, if Newcastle have aspirations of doing well in Champions League and eventually winning the league, that's a midfield three that could win them the league, I think, going forward. But yeah, they were just really impressive. And even want to just give a shout out to the likes of Almiron and Dan Burn, who aren't the most glamorous players, but still do put in a hell of a shift for the team, have moments of real quality as well. There was a moment when Almiron, towards the end of the first half, was running down the right wing, and Emi Martinez, which was a bit of a howler from him, just came out and completely fouled him. But just have the awareness to know where he was compared to the play, and just knock the ball ahead of him and just take the foul and try and get Martinez sent off. It was right for the yellow, but and the fact that Dan Burn was just solid on that left hand side. Leon Bailey didn't have much to do at all. He couldn't do much, and then he ended up actually coming off at half time for Yuri Tillemans, who came off because Emery wanted to try and solidify them. So I think just the Newcastle team, superbly well run, well oiled. Credit to them, and all the goals. All the goals are fantastic as well. Great finishes, well worked. And again, yeah, it's strength to strength. And, they're playing Manchester City away in the next game. And, that's going to be a tough game. And, they're going to give Man City a real run for their money.
Yeah, I think the system they have in that midfield it works really well. There's such a good balance, it feels like, in their side. They have, obviously, Dan Burn is going to be more of your defensive fullback. So you get Joe Linton pushing more towards that left side of midfield where an overlapping fullback would occupy, and then that gives the left winger, whether that's Gordon or Barnes going forward, the opportunity to cut inside, and then Joe Linton can go outside. They get some really good combinations going on there. And then when you have on the other side, you have somebody like Trippier, who is going to be joining up and trying to support someone like Almiron on that right wing. And then you've got Tonali potentially playing that right centre mid, who's going to be a little bit more conservative than Joe Linton would. And it seems like they have really put that squad together and signed the players based on the other players' strengths as well. It's not like they've just gone out and got the best players they can. They have really fit into a team that bounces off each other really well. No two players occupying too much of the same space, no two players doing too much of the same things, and they have a really well-balanced team. And that really came to shine in the second half. It was unfortunate for Villa with Tyrone Mings' injury, I think, is where it's starting to fall apart. And the organisation of that high line that they were playing just completely went. And it meant Newcastle could just get 3 goals on the break, completely tore them apart, and there wasn't really too much Villa could do by the end.
Yeah, I do think some of the goals were quite bad from the Villa perspective. I think it was maybe Alexander Isak's second goal, with the one where he chipped Martinez, where Konza looked like he had the ball completely under control, but then suddenly just loses the balance and steps over the ball, and then all of a sudden Isak's got it in the box, near the 6-yard box, and it's a wonderful chip to get it past Emi Martinez. But it was some of it was quite laughable. I think especially from the set piece as well. I think for Newcastle's second goal, I think, and Isak's first, I think Eddie Howe will be delighted with it, especially because it looks like Trippier's going to put the ball in. He passes it right to Tonali, and Tonali is actually one that puts it in the back post to Botman, and he puts it across to Isak. And I think Unai Emery would be fuming at that one because it was just such a simple adjustment, but that caught them all out, and all of a sudden they've got a goal from it. And you need to be good at a set piece as well, which Newcastle are as well. But then Villa, I don't know. It is unfortunate you said with the Mings injury because the way he fell, he kind of put a bit more pressure and through his right leg, and it's I don't know. It says the Villa came out and said that he sustained a knee injury and it's gonna be out for a few weeks. I think it looks like from me for like an ACL kind of injury. The way he puts a bit of pressure to it is a bit ungainly in the way he lands, and I think it could be a while. Hopefully for Mings it's not because he had a fantastic season last year, did really well. It is interesting because you've got Pau Torres now to come into that role, and before where you thought okay he might have to earn his way into it, Mings would have to be the number one and force him out. Now it looks like he's going to get a clear run to that side. But I also thought it was going to show that they brought on Diego Carlos as well in the second half because they were just like we're getting destroyed here, and Emery just conceded the defeat because he was like, you know what, you've outdone us today, we can't get it and we've got to go home. But I think some positives for Villa fans, so they aren't too disappointed. I thought Diaby looked really good early on. He kind of faded for me towards the back end of the second half. But on the break, he always looked like he was really good, had potential, got a great goal as well. Bit lucky in the way the ball found him, and there was a flick on from Watkins, and he just found himself a space. But it was a great finish on his weaker foot, top bins, and I think Villa fans don't be too harsh on yourselves after one game. It was against Newcastle away. I think a lot of teams are going to struggle away, but I just think one game, let it go, and then they'll be a lot better next week.
Yeah, I think the scoreline is pretty harsh on Villa. I think it was Newcastle played really well and are a great team, and scoring 5 goals they deserve to in the way they played, but I don't think Villa deserved to concede 5 in the way that they played. Diaby looked really good. I'm not quite sure, even like watching the game back, what his position definitely was. It seemed to be in a 4-4-2 when they were defending, but there were times where he was really playing behind Watkins, and then he was also drifting out to the wings. He almost had like a free roll sometimes, it felt. And it'd be interesting to see what Emery's formation is going forward. Seems to be a 4-4-2 defensively, maybe a 4-2-3-1 when they're attacking and building. And it would be interesting to see whether Bailey's going to be playing much going forward. As you said, he was hooked off at half time with only a 35% pass completion rate.
Yeah, that's
only 5 passes made, no dribbles attempted. His tracking and defending seemed really poor. He seemed quite uninterested at times. I think if they can sort of regroup after that, because sometimes when you have a defeat like that, that can really shock a team, and it can cause a wave effect into the next few games. But I think if they can just, as you say, forget about it, have a reset, and I think against a team where they can have a bit more of the ball and they can start building and playing from the back like Emery wants them to, I think they'll be fine, and I think they'll start to gel a bit more and get into the system a bit more.
Yeah, especially since I think, like I said, there's a few teams suffering with a couple of injuries. So Jacob Ramsey wasn't available, so there could be a scenario where he could be playing that in that 4-4-2 kind of 4-2-3-1. He could be playing behind Watkins, which would put Diaby out to the right and then McGinn on the left, and then Bailey would be the option for the bench anyway. So I think there's definitely signs to be positive. It could be one where they have a whole new centre back partnership next week because of the fact that with Konza having not a great game, and obviously Tyrone Mings being out injured, that they could have Diego Carlos and Pau Torres playing a centre back next week. But obviously we've got to talk about Matty Cash's miss. Did you see it?
I did, yeah. There was the Cash miss, which was a bit of a sitter. Watkins also had a really good chance, and you think if they get those 2 goals, it's a different game.
Yeah,
but
yeah. I think it's one where you give Newcastle credit. Aston Villa fans, don't be too hard on yourselves.
Yeah, that sounds like a good summary to me. Another game, potentially quite a large scoreline, where the losing team still could take some credit away from it, take some positives, was the City 3, Burnley 0. It seemed, first half, quite an easy game for City almost. Just playing exactly as you would expect. Haaland obviously scoring as you would expect. Again, got a brace. and Rodri getting the third. Haaland just had a very, what's the word? A very efficient game, I'd say. 2 shots on target, 2 goals. He had 1 off target and 1 blocked as well.
He's inevitable, isn't he?
Yeah, it's always going to happen. But it was nice to see Alvarez play alongside him as well. I think that combination seemed in the first half to work really well, and bouncing a lot of balls off each other. Alvarez getting the assist for Haaland's second goal. I'd like to see more of him play this year. He's such a good player. Yeah, just a solid performance from City. KDB going off injured is a big miss. Haven't heard too much on the injury since, but how long he will be out. Walker also seemed to go off injured towards the end, which is another loss. Stones wasn't playing. 3 quite potentially important players for City that they could be missing for the Super Cup. And then, as you said, Newcastle next week. Burnley, I think it could have been less. It could have been less than 3 if Burnley decided to sit back. But fair play to them, they came out and really tried to play some football at times, which was good to see.
Yeah, it really was. And actually, most of my notes, maybe from the game, were really about Burnley, because I don't think watching that game we really learned anything about Man City that we didn't already know. They're going to be amazing. They're going to beat teams, and a credit to Burnley, because in the way they went out and pressed, it was aggressive. It wasn't the front foot. At times, it did feel amateurish, even though I did understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to stick to their principles, play how they play. But it was at times too easy for them to get past the first layer of the press and then onto the second, and then all of a sudden one more pass and Haaland's through. But I do think they'll beat a lot of teams around them and lower than them, because who will have a lot of success doing it. I did think James Trafford had a great game and goal. For someone you'd expect playing against Man City, you expect to have a lot of shots at you, but he made 5 saves and he had 1 clearance as well. I was a bit worried about him because of Gavin Bazunu from last year, who went to jump from League One to the Premier League with Southampton. Trafford's done a similar thing now, joining Burnley, but I actually think he did hold his own, and that gives me great good hope that he's going to do the same going forward, especially like you mentioned. With the under-21 championships with Anthony Gordon, that hopefully he gained a lot of confidence from that as well. His crucial penalty save in the last minute, I thought he did really well. But yeah, Man City just do feel inevitable, especially even despite it being the first game of the season. They don't have a great first half, but I think they've got new motivation because they've let go a lot of few players, and I think actually it'll be good for the squad, because some players will have to step up. And they're going to have to bring in some fresh faces, because you saw Gavardio come on in the second half, and he's going to be a fantastic player for them. And Kovacic came on and replaced De Bruyne, who did really good again in the Community Shield. It was like he was playing them for ages for Man City, and I think he's just such an intelligent player that he could probably fit into most systems and figure out how to play. And like I said, Alvarez, I think he's the big one because Man City at this moment in time haven't found replacement for Mahrez. So I think there's a slot open, someone's going to take it, and at the moment it seems like Alvarez is the one to take it because he's actually, if anything, I think underutilized last season, and it was Grealish and Mahrez, maybe a bit Foden as well in the first half, not so much the second half, who really took those positions as their own. But I think he did a fantastic job against Burnley. He did really well in the Community Shield, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot of him going forward.
Yeah, hopefully, because he is a quality player, really, really good. Yeah, besides all of that mentioned, really, I think it was just, as you said, what we expected from City. It's good to see Rico Lewis play and playing that inverted role again. Again, seems really comfortable there. He hopefully will get a few more minutes this season and grow as a player. Yeah,
I was actually really surprised when I first saw the team news and he was starting because I did think Nathan Ake would play, and then I was surprised at the centre-back partnership as well. But I just think Man City have so much quality that they can play whoever, and I think especially with the Super Cup in mind in midweek and then Newcastle the weekend, that they really need the strongest 11. I just wanted to give out to one other Burnley player, Zekou Amandini, who obviously played up front on his own. Burnley were playing 5-4-1, and he had a thankless job on his own, and he actually did it right, because obviously the 22-year-old joined from Basel after scoring 12 times and assisting 4 times in the Swiss League last year. And I think, 22 years of age, your first game is against Man City, and you're coming up against that defence and that team who just won the treble. He had a bit of a thankless job, but I thought he did really well. He only had 11 passes, 10 of them were successful. He won 5 of his 8 ground duels, and then he won 1 out of 3 of his aerial duels. Wasn't the most impressive game by numbers, but actually looking at him, he tried really hard and he tried his best. And you know what? I think eventually he will score some goals, but I think Burnley just you go into the next game and you just go, oh well, a bit like Aston Villa.
Yeah, take what you can from it and try and apply those moments where they did have the ball and they were going forward, where they looked positive, looked like they could have scored. They had a couple of decent chances. And I think when you translate that over to them playing against a mid-table, lower side, then they will be playing well and getting some goals and definitely get some points.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine.
All right, give it a rest there, lads. We know what everyone's waiting for. The only Connect quiz. It's time. So last week, it was a 3-0 dub for myself.
Yes, it was very hard. And you know what? I feel really vindicated because you gave our friends the same list of players and you asked them to guess which club and they couldn't get it. So they also got 0 points. 3 other fans. So
yeah, I think I've made it a bit easier, but also a bit harder than the first week because maybe that was a bit easy. So I found a middle ground this week.
We'll see what happens. I think I've gone slightly harder for you, but not too much harder. I think
nice.
I had to be realistic. I wanted to make it harder for you because you were getting them pretty good. But I think your football knowledge in terms of this game and the concept, I think it's quite good. So I thought I'll make it just slightly harder. I think 3 is still average.
Nice.
We'll see how you do today.
Nice. So just a really quick rundown for anyone who hasn't played this again. We each have a list of 5 football players. They've all played for the same mystery club. We list the player. We list a player one at a time. The earlier you get it, the less players you need, the more points you get. So if you get it on the first player, you get 5 points. Second player, 4 points, all the way down until you get 1. Or if you don't get it at all, you get 0.
Yeah. An average is 3 points, so you should normally get it within 3 guesses.
We set that as like a par.
Yeah.
Say, yeah.
So what is? Do you know the total score?
The total score is 7 points to me, 4 points to you.
Okay, great.
Little lead, but
well, as I'm losing, do you mind if I go first?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay,
sure.
So go on.
Okay, so your first mystery player is Stéphane Sessegnon.
Stéphane Sessegnon. So yes, I remember him. He used to play for Sunderland, and he also used to. I think he went from Sunderland to West Brom. Because I think this was around like 2010, 2011. Because I actually remember going, oh, I really want Liverpool to sign him. And my cousin, who was an Arsenal fan, went, well, that's just to show how bad Liverpool are if you want to sign the quality of Ryan Sessegnon. So what was his first name?
Stéphane.
So I think it is the right Sessegnon. So I have no idea. I'm going to go Sunderland.
It is not Sunderland.
Okay.
But I will say it is the right Sessegnon.
Okay. Cool.
So the second player for 4 points is Jesse Rodriguez.
Jesse Rodriguez. I have no idea. But the thing is, I'm going off Stéphane Sessegnon, and I know West Brom had Pepe Mel as a manager who's Spanish. So Jesse, was he? Oh, you can't say. But I'm now thinking, was he the one who was also at Real Madrid for a period of time, the winger/striker? But I'm now trying to think, was he at Stoke for a period of time during that time where they had all the Spanish players like Bojan? Oh, for some reason I think Stoke, so I'm going to go Stoke.
It's not Stoke, unfortunately.
Okay.
The third player for 3 points is Yohan Cabaye.
Right, Yohan Cabaye. Oh, this is tough because so obviously I know him best for his time at Newcastle. Went to PSG, went back to Crystal Palace. Was he at Marseille for a period of time? Stéphane Sessegnon, what nationality was he? What was Jesse Rodriguez? Stéphane Sessegnon, Jesse Rodriguez, Yohan Cabaye. I think Rodriguez might have been at PSG as well, but was Sessegnon? Well, it could have been Marseille. Oh God, now I'm really struggling.
What are you gonna go for?
I'm gonna go for Marseille.
It is not Marseille, unfortunately.
No. What should be West Brom?
The fourth player for 2 points, JJ Okocha.
Right, this is really bad because I only know JJ Okocha from his time at Bolton because I just don't know where he was before or after. So this is really, really bad. Oh no.
I think you'll get it on this one still. I think you can get this.
Bolton.
It's not Bolton.
No, I don't know where he was.
For 1 point, your fifth player. You definitely get it on this one. David Luiz.
David Luiz. So obviously David Luiz, Chelsea, PSG, Benfica. Oh, it must be PSG. Obviously, I don't know how good were PSG pre-money. Kabay was at PSG. David Luiz was at PSG. He was also no, he was not at okay, PSG.
Yeah, it's PSG.
Oh.
You said it on the 4-point play, and I was thinking you're going to get it on the next one because then it was Kabay as well.
Yeah, it was because Stefan Sessio threw me because I wasn't sure if he was at PSG beforehand.
Yeah, he was at PSG a while ago. I'm pretty sure before he sort of came in the Prem.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just trying to think how good were they? Would he have been there? I was like trying to think of his nationality, maybe.
Yeah.
No, that was good. That was really good, actually.
Because JJ Koche had the only two teams I knew he played for with Bolton and PSG, and I feel like I just seen a picture of him in the cool retro PSG kits.
I only remember from Bolton. Okay. 1 point.
1 point.
Oh, God, okay. Now your turn. So, first player is Edgar Alvarez.
Edgar Alvarez.
Edgar Alvarez.
Never heard of him. It would have to be a complete punt. Has there been any Alvarez's in the Prem, maybe? I know there's Edison Alvarez. I think that's the one that West Ham just signed. Maybe he goes by a different name sometimes. So let's go Ajax.
Incorrect. Your next player for 4 points is Michael Bradley.
Michael Bradley. Again, I'm not even sure I know who that is. Michael Bradley. That could be any generic mid-table Prem side. Let's go. It was Alvarez Bradley. Southampton.
No, incorrect.
I'm not going to do well on this.
So, third one, Carlo Ancelotti.
Oh, bloody hell, what is this list? Ancelotti. Who did Ancelotti play for? I know he played for AC Milan back in the day. I'm pretty sure. Michael Bradley, Alvarez. The only team I think Ancelotti I know played for was AC Milan, so I'm going to have to go for that.
Incorrect.
No.
I've made it a bit hard. I thought maybe you get Bradley a bit earlier, or you might have recognised the name.
No idea.
So fourth one, Emerson Palmieri.
Okay. So he's played for West Ham, Chelsea, Lyon. He's definitely played in the Italian league at some point. Who for? I don't know if he was at Napoli. It's possible. Leon, could it be Chelsea? Michael Bradley. Maybe Ancelotti managed Chelsea, so there's a chance he played for them. Chelsea, West Ham, Lyon, and there's like a Fiorentina or Napoli or something like that. Let's go for Lyon.
Incorrect.
No.
I was really thought because Ancelotti hasn't played for many teams in his playing career, that will give you a massive hint.
Yeah, AC Milan. I mean, not even sure if he has played for them, but
okay. So last one, Mohamed Salah.
It's going to be Fiorentina. Oh no, he played for Roma as well, Salah, didn't he? Has Emerson played for Roma? Or could it be? I said Chelsea last time, didn't I?
You already said Chelsea as a guess.
It's either Roma or Fiorentina. Then I feel like last time I said Emerson was Fiorentina. So I'm going to go for Fiorentina.
It's incorrect.
No!
It's Roma.
Oh,
it's Roma.
Is that 0?
That is 0.
Shocking. So you've got a 1 point gain there.
Yeah. So Edgar Alvarez, I had never heard of him either.
Yeah.
So he was a Honduras right winger who played 20 appearances for Roma in the 05-06 season. Then they bought him, and then they loaned him out for 3 consecutive seasons.
Nice.
And he played once for them permanently.
Nice.
Yeah. Michael Bradley, US international, made 41 appearances between 2012 and 14.
I know him now, yeah.
Carlo Ancelotti only played for Parma, Roma, and AC Milan.
Damn.
Made 181 appearances between 79 and 87. Emerson Palmieri, 34 appearances between 2015 and 2018.
Wow.
And Mo Salah. No stats
Nil
for
point.
him.
Nil point. None needed.
No. None needed. I thought Ancelotti would give you a massive one because I swear there was this thing because he's obviously managed Parma and AC Milan, and because he was a former player at those two clubs as well. I thought that
Yeah.
would have given you a hint. I thought you knew that fact. I thought it was quite common.
That's why I went for Chelsea. I thought, oh, he has managed them, so maybe he played like a season there or something.
Yeah.
But damn,
That's
it's not a
unfortunate.
good week. That's not
No,
a good
low
week.
scoring week.
That was a good level of
Yeah.
difficulty, I think, on both sides. I think
Yeah.
I could have got that for maybe a 2. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm a 1 point gain.
Yeah.
So what's the difference now?
So now it's 7-5.
7-5. The comeback's on.
Right, back into the episode.
And so, two teams who were roughly mid-table last year. We're both excited to see how well they do, because I don't think we quite agree on where they could be quite high in the league, they could be quite low in the league. We're not sure, but Brentford 2, Spurs 2, Brentford next year 2.22, Spurs with 1.27. And obviously before the game, Harry Kane had left to Bayern Munich. It was official. Obviously Richarlison was playing up front. And it was a good game, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was a really good game. The first half was brilliant. It's just Spurs had a lot of the ball, creating some good chances when they had it, and then Brentford on the counter were really dangerous. They looked really comfortable as normal, sitting back and waiting for those counters. Didn't actually look too much like they missed Ivan Toney, I didn't think, against Spurs. And that's not a discredit to Toney, that's just a credit to how Brentford played and how they set up without him. Their outlet, a lot of the time, as opposed to being direct to Toney, seemed to be out to Rico Henry on the left. I thought he had a really, really good game. He gave Emerson Royale and Romero before he came off. And then that became Davinson Sanchez. A lot of problems on that left-hand side. And then it was different. Brentford really looked good on the break. Spurs also looked good when they had the ball. They had a lot of possession, which I think we were expecting on a Postecoglou. And a couple of good players I think really stood out were James Maddison, especially on a league debut for a big club. It's got the number 10 shirt now, so a lot of pressure that comes with that following Harry Kane. And he seemed really comfortable. He seemed really confident, which is good. And I think that's a large part of Maddison's game. As we were saying in our predictions, he is the player who wants to be on the ball. And I think when you're playing with him, he's someone you want to give the ball to as well, because you know that. He was their creative outlet. He was the one pulling the strings in the midfield. Where Son and Kulusevski, I don't think, had their best games. Kulusevski had a few decent sort of chances created, but Son, not so much. And I'd be interested to see whether, because of how Maddison plays, he loves to play in that left channel half space where he's cutting in, whether that's to cross it or to shoot. And that we know that that's where Son loves to as well. The amount of times we've seen him come inside and whip something in the top corner. Whether it was Son having a bad day or maybe Maddison having such a good game that it pushed Son a lot wider where he couldn't be as a strong influence as we have seen. And Basuma, I think, had a really good game as well. He was someone I was hoping was going to be playing this season and someone who fits into that 4-2-3-1 system really well. He... as I was saying, Rico Henry's a lot of the attacks coming from the left. Basuma was sat on, it would be Brentford's right, Tottenham's left, and they didn't really have much luck down that side. And I think a large part of that was Basuma. He was really controlling in that game when he got the ball, just played it quick and progressive when he needed to, but also slowed it down when Tottenham wanted to keep that ball. I'm not too convinced by Skip sitting alongside next to him. I don't particularly rate him as a player, and I think them having Højbjerg on the bench when you're starting Skip is very strange to me, and I'm not too sure of the reason there. I think Basuma-Højbjerg would be a perfect partnership. I think Basuma sitting, controlling, and Højbjerg being that carrier to drive them forward would be a really good combo. And maybe that's something we'll see in the future, I don't know, but I think it would be a bit of an upgrade. There were also a couple of players for Spurs who maybe didn't play so well. As I said, Son and Kulusevski weren't great, and Richarlison didn't seem to be used to that sort of striker position in the Spurs system yet. Obviously, having Harry Kane being there for so long, he was playing more on the left or more on the right, and I wasn't particularly convinced by his performance. I don't know if there are any players for you who you noticed in that game that maybe stood out or didn't stand out.
I completely agree with you on Maddison and Basuma. I think Basuma, especially for me, was man of the match. I've just got some stats on him here. 138 touches, 107 accurate passes, 1 key pass. He won 9 out of his 12 ground duels. And then defensive numbers, 2 clearances, 4 interceptions, and 3 tackles. And I just have in my notes, unit.
Yeah,
He was really good in front of that back four. But I think people talk about how a Spurs can replace Harry Kane. You don't necessarily have to replace all 30 of his goals. You just got to be much better defensively. And the Spurs were not that. No. I thought Emerson Royale, although he got the second goal for them, he got obliterated by Rico Henry for their second goal and for pace, and he just outdone them. And I think also I wasn't too impressed by the centre backs because I think Romero and Mickey van der Ven, I think it's a good to okay centre back partnership. They need to play together for a while because and it's a shame now that Romero's got his head injury, and he might be out for a week or so just for precautions. But yeah, honestly, I think that defensively, that's where the Spurs need to buckle up their ideas a lot more. Because time and again, Brentford were amazing at getting past them. I think Mbuemo's definitely taken up the mantle of being the main man in Tony's absence, and he needs to. If Brentford are to have a good season again, and he really showed he was. He played really well, counter-attacked really well, dribbled, had a high dribble success rate, and he did really well going forward. And took the pen as well, so it was interesting. Fantasy football managers would be loving that.
Yeah, it was a Tony-esque run-up as well,
It
wasn't
was, yeah. The whole leap and everything.
Yeah.
Watching the goalkeeper. But I just think Spurs are a side which they're going to be. They're a likable side, I suppose, Spurs, but you don't think they're going to win too many games. And to be fair, Brentford did have a really good record last year against the top six sides at home. So to come away with a draw isn't the worst result first game. And I think it gives Postecoglou a lot to look into, especially, finding out more about his squad. I think I do agree with Richarlison. He did get chances. The quality of his strikes weren't there, and I think his movement could have been better at times. I don't want to be too harsh on him because anyone who's playing in the Spurs side after Harry Kane's left is going to get a lot of criticism. But he didn't fill you with confidence, did he?
No, he had a few good touches, a few good dribbles, a few good passes, but he didn't feel like that sort of, I guess, a clinical or like a natural striker, I suppose you could say.
Yeah. The one that did surprise me, and I do agree with you, was the fact that Højbjerg was on the bench, and I don't necessarily mind Skip starting, but I don't think he had a good game, which is why I was surprised he didn't get hooked a bit earlier, about 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah.
Sarv that came on, which is then when I questioned why Højbjerg didn't come on when you're chasing the game. Well, I say Spurs were chasing the game. They had for the whole second half. They were the team on top. Brentford were trying to look to counter, but really neither side created too many great chances in that second half to actually go and win the game. It was all mainly in the first half, and you also had Lascelles on the bench as well, which I thought was even more likely because I think he's one where he probably plays in the same areas that Maddison wants to be, like you said, on the left, taking up those half spaces, but he's probably more looking to get the ball outside, passing it to the winger or the fullback, which was the issue because the two wing backs were actually inverting. Doji and Royale, they're both inverting into midfield, and then when you're joining up with Basuma in field, that's fine, but when it's Maddison and Skip is the other one joining that attack, that's where it's an issue.
Yeah.
And I do think Son had a bad game. New Spurs captain, which I think is the right decision. Because who else would it be? Maybe Højbjerg, but if he's not starting in the first game of the season, maybe he's not fancied too much.
Yeah.
But I thought Ivan Perisic when he came on actually did much better than him. Which goes to show I think he just had a bad game. Which he really needs to step up in Kane's absence, but he didn't have a great season last year. And if he has too many more of those, there will be a narrative going around saying, is he past his best? And how could you do that when you let Kane go? So I think there is a bit of pressure with Spurs. I think people are willing to give him a bit more time, a few games, maybe the first international break, just to see how they are. But I do think they are going to struggle this year. Maybe you were right when you're saying 8th in the season predictions.
I mean, I first had them in 9th.
Yeah,
so,
I think I bumped you up to 8. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I think there were still some bright moments in there, and I think maybe 9th was a bit harsh looking back, but still a little bit to go.
Yeah, you do think if Maddison gets injured, where could they be? They could be a way bit off because he's the only midfielder of his kind in that team. And normally in Ange Postecoglou teams, you have two of those attacking number 8s, kind of hybrid 8s, 10s. So if he's injured, then you do really worry for Spurs. But yeah, need to be better defensively, create more chances, and some of the front three need to take them. But yeah, we'll see how they go.
Yeah, and credit to Brentford in that game. They played, I think, as we expected on that transition, on that counter, defended well when they needed to, and made a really good game out of it. And again, they'll be in and around that 9th, 10th, 11th place quite comfortably.
Yeah, and I think, fair play to Brentford as well, because with Tony's ban up until January, there could have been a narrative going, oh, not sure how they're going to do, are they going to struggle? But in fact, everyone I've seen has been like, no, they'll be absolutely fine. And they looked like they'll be fine. Yeah. So credit to them, credit to Thomas Frank for setting them up so well.
Yeah. On to the next one. which we have Brighton 4, Luton 1.
Arguably the most predictable result of the game week.
Yeah, I would think so. It was very comfortable for Brighton in the end. Next year 4 compared to 1.5 of Luton.
Yeah.
Fair play to Luton getting 1.5. That is decent, and getting a goal.
But even just that, fair play for getting an XG of 1.5.
I think in terms of the game itself, not in
Yeah.
terms of Luton. I meant that because Brighton were on top for the whole game. They completely dominated the ball. 27 shots to Luton's 9. It felt like Brighton were... I was going to say it felt like they were in like second gear, but it didn't. It felt like they just maybe didn't take as many chances as they could have. It could have been a lot more, and it was a performance as we'd expect from Brighton. A few changes in the team, which were interesting to see. It was good to see Gross stepping back into midfield in McAllister's absence, and Milner sitting in that right back position, which don't think I was too convinced by. I think he got away with it because of how much Brighton dominated, and I think he'll be okay in the easier games, but the tougher games, I'm not too sure.
I feel so bad for Milner because obviously he was playing right mid at Manchester City, and then he left to join Liverpool to play centre midfield, and then he plays a whole season left back, then gets used as a utility player, left back, right back, defensive midfielder, hardly ever at centre midfield apart from like when he comes on for 20 minutes. And now he's gone to Brighton, which is another step down, you would say. Well, based on last season, it was probably arguably quite similar, but he's gone to Brighton and you go, okay, he's going to short the midfield, and then he plays the right back. And
Yeah.
I just feel so sorry for him.
But yeah, he was solid. He had a decent game. And then we've got João Pedro coming into the team as well. It seemed like they had a bit of a system change with that. João Pedro playing as that second striker, I suppose. That number 10 sitting behind Danny Welbeck, who had a really good game. I think Welbeck, he's still got a lot to show, and he fits into De Zerbi's style really well. Yeah, just solid. I really liked March's goal, the Mitoma in onto March. I think he's really underrated, Solly March. He had a brilliant year last year, 7 goals, 7 assists, one of Brighton's best players, and didn't really get too many plaudits or many people shouting about him, but he is just a decent, solid performer, really high energy, really good press, and loves to cut in on that left foot. Yeah, it seemed there was a slight change in the tactic as well. They seemed a lot more transitional, Brighton. They did dominate the ball, but it felt like a lot of their best moves came as opposed to them sort of being on the ball, waiting for the Luton press, as they had the classic De Zerbi instructing his centre-backs to put his foot on the ball, to suck that press in, play it, bing, go. It was almost as soon as they got the ball sometimes, they were playing it out straight away as opposed to waiting for the press to come and beating it. Whether that was something that we'll see more going forward or because it was against Luton and the press would be much harder to suck in because they're not going to be pressing, they are going to be sitting back. Yeah, I don't know what you thought of Luton as opposed to how well Brighton played maybe.
Yeah, it's hard because there's only been one match all these teams have played, and you don't want to be too harsh or get too excited after one game week, but I did think some of the defending was a bit amateurish. No, amateurish is too harsh, but just not at the level required at times. So I think for the I think I can't remember. I think there's a phase of play when Mitoma got the ball and he was running at Anderson, who I think is a really good player because he obviously signed him from Barnsley. He did really well last year, and I thought he'd be a good signing for them to take the defense up a level, maybe not the level required to be at the Premier League. But then he was good. But then he just couldn't get anywhere near Mitoma at times when he was beating the right wing back Kabore and then running at him. So, and then obviously the third Brighton goal after Luton had just got back into the game. I can't quite remember which player it was.
Adingra scored the goal.
Yeah, but
the player who made
and
the mistake.
Bansu, for Luton. I think he's the player actually who's gone through the entire football league with Luton, and arguably he was the worst player on the pitch. Because I don't know what he's doing after you've just got back into the game and you chest the ball in the area. Fine, don't have an issue with that. But then he hesitates for a moment with one of the other Luton defenders, and then along he comes and scores a goal. And after you just got back into the game, you give yourself a chance, and then obviously from there they go Brighton going to make a 4 with Evan Ferguson. But I don't know. They don't look ready for the Premier League, but arguably will they ever be ready for the Premier League? I don't think so. I do think they have to defend better than they did today. I think it was too easy at times for Brighton.
It was a lot of space. I noticed a lot of space for in those half spaces, which is the areas in the Premier you need to come out and have not let people get into them. It seemed like Matoma and March were getting into them a lot. João Pedro as well. He really likes drifting into that left half space and was able to create a lot. He was pulling strings. It was really impressive performance from him, I thought, as well.
Yeah, on debut as well. A player who has spent a couple of years at Watford now. And then the Brighton paid a decent amount for him as well to get him from Watford. And, he really showed that, he could handle it in the Prem. Arguably should have scored a bit earlier. He had a chance.
Yeah.
Scuffed it wide, and I thought that was really poor. But, I think he's another one that's really going to get better. And Brighton as a team are really going to get better. I was surprised, actually, when I did see the average age, though, of Brighton's first team, 29.2.
Wow, that's quite old.
Obviously, pensioners and James Milner don't help.
Yeah, he just raises it up. Take him out and it's 21.
Yeah, exactly. But I did think to myself, obviously, you got Jason Steele in goal, Lewis Dunk, you got Pascal Gross in midfield, Danny Welbeck, Solly Marsh isn't the youngest either. So they've got a lot of players in the starting 11 who are really a bit older. But then actually, when you look at some of the youngsters in the squad and then off the bench as well, I think, they're such a well-run club. They've got the perfect balance, if anything. And, don't even need Moises Caicedo.
Yeah, I think that's, as you were saying, those youngsters in the team, hopefully we'll get to see them a bit more in the cup competitions and in the Europa League this season. I think we'll see Ferguson a lot more, Adingra, Buonanotte, Enciso, Gilmore, all these really great young players who all came on and helped Brighton get their third and fourth goals. Adingra as well, grabbing his first goal. He was in the Pro League last season, 11 goals, 9 assists in 36 games. Looks like a really good, exciting young player, and just another one for Brighton. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, and I think Evan Ferguson as well, obviously getting the fourth goal, but with the Europa League, you'd expect him to get a few more goals than he did last year as well, more minutes on the pitch. It's one where a lot of people are comparing him to actually Rasmus Højlund, who's obviously made the move to Man United. It looks like Evan Ferguson's not going to leave. He's going to stay at Brighton, and actually be really exciting to see, because just watching the two players' trajectories and seeing the two different paths they decided to take, see how it's going to work. Because I think maybe not this year, but I think next season Evan Ferguson's going to explode next season. I think he needs a bit more experience, get a bit of European football on him as well. But I think once he grows into it, I think he'll be about 2021 next season. And I think he'll be going for near 100 million next year if he can stay fit.
Yeah, it seems they're managing him really well. They're not throwing him in the deep end every game, playing him, because I think to put that sort of pressure on a player of that age doesn't do them a lot of good most of the time. And yeah, I think easing him into the team, sharing the minutes with Welbeck and Undav is a good decision from the club. And yeah.
I guess you could play João Pedro there as well if need be.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It looks like you said, he's going to be playing a bit off. But yeah, a lot of positives. And on to two teams who arguably not too many positives. Everton 0, Fulham 1. What did you make of the game?
It was, I think maybe 1-0 makes it sound like a bit more of a boring game than it was. There was a lot of chances. It could have been sort of 2-2, 3-2 either way. 2.7 XG for Everton, 1.5 for Fulham. Everton with 9 shots on target and 2 for Fulham. I think Everton played well. I think they were arguably the better side. They didn't see as much of the ball. They only had around 40% possession, but they looked a lot more dangerous. I would say they looked the team more likely to score. Certainly in the first half, they had some really good chances. Doucouré should have put one away, really. That one-on-one where it broke through, he could have either passed it or tried to finish it. It was a good save from Leno in the end. But I think if Doucouré gets that goal, Everton go and end up winning that game quite comfortably. I think they could have gone 1-0 up, sat back and broke. And they were breaking really well, even when it was 0-0. Maupay missed another good chance, and I think that was maybe the tail of Everton's game. Created really good chances. I think Doucouré, Iwobi and Onana all had really good games and looked really positive. They looked really energetic and dangerous, and it was just a case they couldn't put the ball in the net, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think with that's the main issue with Neil Maupay, because obviously he gets those chances, but he can't take them. He has a hat-trick of those, and I think as well, when you look at the team, just avoid the goals. I mean, Doucouré will grab you maybe 5 to 8 goals a season. He's not going to grab you too many. Someone a bit more clinical in that position would have possibly and should have scored that goal. I think you could even put it down to being a big chance. But I think Bernd Leno was amazing against
He was,
against
yeah.
Everton that day. 9 saves he made in the end. Obviously, there was that situation which was a bit awkward with the goal disallowed.
Mm,
When Bernardo tried to come to catch the ball from across, and he kind of caught the ball, but has had his arms over Tarkovsky,
yeah.
and obviously he's putting his weight down on Tarkovsky, so it looked like he was trying to balance himself out, putting his arms out, and obviously the ball ends up in the back of the net as a result of that. But the referee gives it as a disallowed goal for a foul, and I wasn't quite sure. I thought that goal should have stood.
I think I think if you see the last like few seconds of the clip where he's got the ball in his hand and he's just coming down and just seems to drop it on his shoulders, I would say it was definitely not a foul. But I did notice there was a tiny little push before Leno had even caught the ball, which I think may have been the reason why the ref gave it. It was one of those where I think it was Tarkovsky was backing into Leno and you could see Leno's legs sort of go back a bit, and I think the ref might have seen that, and then when the catch was made that was dropped, he blew the whistle almost straight away before the ball went in the net, which is why VAR didn't look at it. And I think because of that it was a little hip nudge from Tarkovsky into Leno's legs when he was just in the air. I think it may have been given for that. It was quite harsh still,
Yeah.
but I think if you're an Everton fan, you'd be pretty unhappy with that.
Yeah, I think I saw Everton fans fuming at it.
Mm.
I mean, ultimately, it's weird because actually there have been so many refereeing decisions already.
Yeah.
And we don't like to talk about referees, but then, I mean, that's just goes to show the Premier League's back when you talk about referees.
Yeah.
But I do think Everton should have taken the chances before it even got to that. I think, like you said, Mapai with a hat-trick of chances, Decore. I do think defensively, they got really caught out with the goal, though. And I think Sean Dyche will be bitterly disappointed with that because it seemed... that everyone, the whole defence got sucked over to the left-hand side of their defence to Fulham's right attacking side. And all of a sudden, when the ball, Andres Pereira does win the ball really well, sliding in, trying to get the ball off Tarkovsky, and then he puts the ball across. Even Patterson, the right back, is getting drawn out to the left-hand side of the defence. And so Bobby Reed, he just has a tap-in. And honestly, you cannot allow that to happen. But then, especially when after that as well, he was running at Patterson, who I thought did actually have a bit of a bad game. Obviously, he struggled with injuries a lot last year, and hopefully they're all behind him. But I think he did really struggle for someone who is a Scottish international as well. And I think he should have done better. But I think there are positives for Everton to take, but it's just annoying because of the way that they felt like they could have won the game, especially against Fulham, who I think were generally quite poor during the game. They could have, got 3 points against a team who a lot of people are saying are going to be down this season. Maybe not relegated, but in and amongst it. And for Fulham to get 3 points away to Goodison Park, you take that on the first game in the season.
Yeah, I think, like we said, it's that Everton not taking those chances, not being clinical, where it will cost them this season. And it almost cost them last season. They had an XG of 34. Oh, no, sorry. They only scored 34 goals last season. And their XG was, I think it was 50. And they had the biggest underperformance of XG of anyone in the league. If they would have got those 50 goals, they would have been 3-4 places higher than they were. And I think that's the difference they need to try and make this season. Dwight McNeil, their top scorer, 7 goals last year. I'm still not sure where those goals are going to come from. They seem to be making the chances, but I don't know who is going to be consistently be able to take them for them.
Yeah, well, they're really hoping for Yusuf Chermiti, who they signed from Sporting on a 4-year deal. They're really hoping for him, which is a lot to expect from a teenager. But
yeah, I saw they were also linked to is it Etikite or Ekitike from PSG? Yeah. I'm not sure because they've signed Chermiti now. They probably won't be going for him as well. But yeah, in terms of Fulham, it was quite a lacklustre performance, like you said. Some good moments, and Leno, standout players. We've already said he prevented 3.3 goals in terms of post-shot expected goals on target, which is that is amazing, really, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, no, I think he's actually been one of the most underrated signings Fulham have had last year, especially when you think about the fact that everyone's talking about Paulinho, all the focus is on him, but actually Leno was a fantastic signing as well because. I think Rodak's a very good goalkeeper. He's a decent backup, but I think in the Premier League you need someone of Leno's quality, and I think he's really saved Fulham towards the back end of last year and the first game of this season so far already. I did want to touch on Raul Jimenez because obviously he started up front, and obviously he hit the post in the second half, but really he didn't have I don't want to be too harsh on him because I do think the whole team didn't have a great game, and so therefore he didn't get the service he needed to actually score the goals. But when he gets a chance, and he just looks like he's so drained of confidence. I think it was 28 games he played for Wolves and hasn't scored a goal, and now he's coming that into Fulham as well. I don't think it's too great for Fulham to having him lead the line. Obviously Mitrovic did come on in the second half before the 60th minute, and after the player came out and said he doesn't want to play for Fulham anymore, and then he's played the last game, he really wants to move. To now have this like massive U-turn with Marco Silva after having like deep meaningful chat. So he should be on Love Island. But to now come on and play, I'm not sure how Fulham fans really feel about it. I don't know any Fulham fans myself, so I'd love to hear. But it does seem a bit odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised to see him in the squad, let alone for him to come on, to be honest. So it'd be quite interesting to see whether he is going to be starting and leading the line for them going forward. It seems they have sorted out their differences, or if they are still looking to sell him on. I can imagine if they get a decent bid in, he will be going, which will be a big miss for them because it did seem like they missed him today.
Yeah, and especially with Palhinha out injured, I was looking at that Fulham squad and they don't have too much quality, and it did look like a team that could very much get relegated to the Championship. Because apart from like Bernd Leno, I mean Tete I think is a great right back. I think Anthony Robinson has a lot of potential, but Diop and Ream I'm not sure about. At centre back, Reed, Lukic, and Kearney. Is that a midfield three for the Premier League? I'm not sure. I mean, I think Harry Wilson, Jimenez, and Willian maybe in names, yes, but in terms of quality, I'm not quite sure. I mean, Willian's also been linked with a move away, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of turmoil at Fulham, and I think they're probably a team who just want the transfer window to be over.
Yeah, I mean, despite the fact they got 3 points, it feels like they will need to improve a bit. It seemed quite easy for Everton to get through their midfield at times and create chances, especially on the transition. So I think a little bit. I still want to see with Fulham, but they could be struggling against teams who will be more clinical and better teams who will make even more chances than Everton did.
Yeah, and Brentford at home next week, so you can't expect that to be an easy game either.
Yeah.
I think Mbeumo might really do them.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, so moving on to Bournemouth 1, West Ham 1. And what did you make of the game?
Yeah, it was a really interesting game. I was quite excited to watch this game, as weird as it sounds, a sort of mid-table clash, because I really wanted to see how Bournemouth were going to line up with Iraola and how they were going to play. And I think if we would have said last season that Bournemouth would be having a game against West Ham where they'd be having 63% possession, would have been quite surprised. Similar amount of shots each, 14 for Bournemouth and 16 for West Ham. It was quite an even game, I thought. Either side could have won it. Yeah, seeing Bournemouth was really interesting. It was Billing was playing in a much deeper role than we've seen him in the last few years. He's been, I think he was their top scorer last season, playing almost off Solanke in some ways, like a number 10.
Yeah, it was either him or Solanke, one of them.
Yeah, and he was playing in a much deeper role, which I really think suited the way they were playing, because he's very solid on the ball, strong, and he was keeping the ball for them really well. Max Aarons seems like a really good signing. It's surprising how long it's taken him to have a move, and I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago we were expecting it to be to one of the bigger clubs. And he seemed to fit in really well, had a decent game. Yeah, they just seemed like a good, solid performance from Bournemouth. It would have been nice to see Traore come on. I think he's one player I'm still really excited to see a little bit more of. And I think Scott, who they've just signed from Bristol City, will be a really exciting player for them and will fit straight in. He seems really decent. West Ham had an okay game, I'd say. I think for them, they probably could play better than they did. Jarrett Bowen scored a lovely goal. I think he could be that player that they need to step up and score them goals, because I think Antonio had quite a lacklustre performance again. He didn't have a single shot. He didn't seem to get much of the ball. He didn't seem like an outlet for them, really. And Paqueta had a really good game, which is annoying because he's probably going to be going to Man City. And I think that's really annoying for West Ham fans, especially last season. He seemed a little bit disappointing in that first half of the season. And then we started to see his real quality shine once he got that freedom and confidence to drive and create things, and was the real engine of that team, really. And I'm a little bit not worried for West Ham. I think that's a bit strong. I think they played well. But I'm not quite sure if someone like Ward-Prowse is the player who is going to elevate them that much. I think they need someone who's going to be really creative and aggressive. And I'm not sure where Ward-Prowse is going to fit in that team. They seem to be playing 4-2-3-1. Souček and Paqueta were playing at the moment. And if Ward-Prowse is coming in to sit alongside Souček, it's not the most mobile double pivot. And then they've also got Alvarez, who's a little bit more exciting, a little bit more progressive than Ward-Prowse, but still quite a defensive player who's sitting back. And I'm not sure if their system's going to change with these players coming in, or how they are going to create a few more chances and get a few more goals, which I think maybe they're down for this season.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because there's still so much. Well, initially, after the high of winning the Conference League, immediately you're like, your chairman comes out, we're going to lose Rice, and there's a bit of a down, and they haven't really been managed to sign anyone. So obviously, Alvarez being the very first one, and then James Ward-Prowse. I think it's not going to be as progressive or as sexy going forward as I think they were under Declan Rice, with Declan Rice in the team. Sorry. I think they're going to be a more functional and more robust team. I think Ward-Prowse is, a Premier League proven centre midfielder, and I think he'll probably play alongside Souček, and he'll be doing a bit of the Rice stuff in terms of the progressive passes and carries, but he's not going to be as good as Rice is doing that. Very few players in the world are. But I think he'll be utilising him mainly for set pieces, with his one other right foot. I think Alvarez arguably is more of a Souček kind of player in that West Ham team. He's more a defensive midfielder, so is it more for depth? Is Souček maybe going to be rotated with the Europa League as well? Especially, I do agree. I think Paqueta is the big question mark, because if he goes to Man City, West Ham are playing with Pablo Fornals in the 10, and although while he's fine, I don't think he could be. I think that's an area where they could upgrade on. So obviously, because they had Souček, Rice, and Paqueta last year, so Fornals coming into the team, obviously they're a bit weaker now. But it is a bit interesting at West Ham, because Maguire's going to be coming in as well, and there seem to be a lot of players for squad depth, but I'm not sure how many are like you said are elevating the first team. And I'm not sure many are, and I think they really need that in terms of goals and assists especially. So I don't know who they should go out and get, but they do need some more signings. Alex Scott at who Bournemouth have just signed, they would have been fantastic for them, because I think he's one who's destined to be playing for England. He's played, for England at every youth level so far. He's done really well for Bristol City, and I think it's maybe not this season, and it's probably going to be more next season, where after the season of getting his feet under the table at Bournemouth, where he's really going to thrive. I think arguably he could be playing in that 10 where Billing was, but where Billing behind him, he could have a really concrete foundation to go forward and really have some exciting link-up play, especially with the exciting wingers they've got as well. Which are actually the area of the pitch I was kind of disappointed with Bournemouth, because although they're playing, had 63% possession, doing really well going forward, it was actually their wide play which wasn't that great. I thought, I was expecting a bit more, especially with the signings that they brought in this summer. So, I think for Bournemouth it's absolutely fine. It's the first game of the season. They took a while to actually sack Gary O'Neill before they brought in Areola. So, he hasn't got his full pre-season. He got the large part of it, but not a full one, just to get his feet under the table and, implement his style of play into these players, because, it's going to be a lot of different, because, Gary O'Neill, he didn't have a lot of possession. They were making lots of passes through the middle of the pitch. There was more long ball to Solanke. So it's a different style of play to how they stayed up in the league. But I think going forward, it's probably the way they need to play to, attract better players and make the way up the league eventually.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And so, final game of the week, we got Sheffield United 0, Crystal Palace 1. And actually, I did think to myself that, Sheffield United are going to struggle this year. But I thought Crystal Palace was a good first team to actually have, especially at home. But it didn't work out like that. And I'm actually quite disappointed with Sheffield United, because I thought Crystal Palace dominated the game.
Yeah, it seemed quite easy for Palace at times. 2xG to 0.5 for Sheffield. Palace ended up having 24 shots with 68% possession. It was quite an easy game for them despite the scoreline. Sheffield United just seemed to give them a lot of space a lot of the time. Their wing backs, I'm not quite sure what the plan was. They seemed to be defending really narrow sometimes, and that gave Ayew and Schlupp a lot of room. And almost sometimes it felt like when they had the ball, it was like they were waiting for someone to come to them and it just didn't happen. It was really strange. And then there were also times where they then changed to have their wing backs defending really wide and have as much coverage laterally across the pitch as they could. And then the gaps between the centre backs and the wing backs was where they were attacking. It seemed they didn't quite know what to do. And it just became quite easy for Palace. Odsonne Edouard getting the goal. He also had 2 goals ruled out for offside. Again, coming from, I think one of the ruled out goals was from where the wing backs really, really narrow and they just went round, crossed it in, scored. And then the other one was just a simple through ball. And I think that gave a lot of room for Palace's star player, who was probably Eze. He had a lot of really good runs. He had 5 out of 9 crosses, 2 out of 2 dribbles, and 7 key passes. He was really pulling the strings for them, as you'd expect. And I was really impressed with the pivot of Lerma and Doucouré. I think Jefferson Lerma had a really good game. Whether that was because Sheffield United's midfield was a little lacklustre, but he seemed to be really driving them forward a lot of the time, which was good to see. What did you reckon to Sheffield United's performance?
Yeah, I just thought it was a bit disappointing because especially the way the goal came, I thought Sheffield United having not helped themselves in the transfer market, losing Iliman and Dye, and having 2 new centre forwards starting up front, I thought the least they do is be defensively resolute. But like you said, it was confusing at times. I didn't quite understand it, and Crystal Palace just had the better of them. It seemed every time they attacked. So it was unimpressive, and that's saying something because I wasn't expecting much anyway. I think Foderingham had a great game in goal, made 8 saves. He's gonna have to do that pretty much every game, I think. If Sheffield United are to stay in the league this year, I did think Max Lowe or Oliver Norwood in midfield were their better players, although without being amazing. Yeah, I do really struggle, and what I think I'm struggling with is I'm looking for something to give me hope and excitement that they are going to stay in the league. At least with Luton, I thought to myself, okay, Clinton Morris with a penalty, he at least had a chance in the game as well. Burnley, they're exciting football, and I think that generally because of the quality of how well they did. But Sheffield United, I'm really struggling to find something to hang my hat on, and I think that's probably what Sheffield United fans are struggling with as well because, I mean, if you're not excited going to the games to watch your team, and I don't know what the plan is to score goals. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. I'm just struggling in general with Sheffield United.
Yeah, it wasn't a good game. It's difficult to tell with these sorts of games whether it's because Sheffield United was so poor or because Palace was so good, and it probably ended up being a bit of both. And I think that'd be interesting to see Palace come up against a tougher side. And also Sheffield United come up against a tougher side as well. I could see it being very comfortable for a lot of teams unless they change. I don't really know what the best strategy for them would be, whether to go even more sitting back and go absolutely low block and just try and get some more chances on the counter, or to potentially play a little bit more progressive and a bit riskier, because I don't think they really knew, to be honest.
No, it is a bit of a struggle. I mean, like you said perfectly, like Crystal Palace need to play a harder team, play Arsenal next week, and Sheffield United need another game, and they're playing Nottingham Forest. So, both challenges for both teams in areas they need, actually, I think. But yeah, the question is with Sheffield United, because these are 2 more of the more winnable games that they're going to have. And so if they're looking unimpressive against Crystal Palace at home in the first game of the league season, I'm not sure what the rest of the season is going to look like. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of them, because I don't think that they're gonna have. They are gonna win games of football this season. They are gonna do it, and arguably they will probably at some point win a game against a massive Big Six team, and then everyone will think that might be a catalyst. But I just don't see them putting any 2 games together, because I don't think they're gonna be consistent enough. And goals again is a big one. I think the more I think about it, I think the more is a mistake selling Ndiaye to Marseille. I mean, I know you have to if the player wants to go and is requested to leave. But even with 1 year left on this contract and you're going to lose him for free, at least give yourself a fighting chance. With the parachute payments, do you really need 11 to 15 million now. I just think it's a bit strange, but I guess they probably weren't expecting to get promoted. I mean, they needed to because of the financial situation they're in. But at least with Luton, I can see a plan. I just don't see it with Sheffield United.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was all the games that have been played so far. We are currently filming just before the Man United game is about to kick off.
Okay.
Lineup's just been released. I think it's about as expected. Rashford's playing up top. Onana, Premier League debut, and Mount sitting alongside Casemiro.
Yeah.
No Højlund.
No, he's
still out, isn't he injured? Yeah.
So do you want to give a prediction for that game? Seeing when this podcast is out, the games that have been played, so people can either laugh at us.
Yeah, so Man United at home against Wolves, I think it could be fairly comfortable. I would probably go... Let's go 2-0 Man United. I thought that's quite conservative.
I was going to go 2-0 as well, but since you already said I'll be different and go 3-0.
3-0, nice. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So, after game week 1, Newcastle are on top. Aston Villa are bottom.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep, and that's how the Premier League season probably going to finish.
Yeah, so we'll have another episode next week looking at the game week 2.
Yeah.
And see what changes, see if there's been any improvements following game week 1 or how the teams have changed.
Yeah, can't really draw too much into it after 2 weeks, but just excited for more football.
Yeah. Got Super Cup midweek as well.
Super Cup midweek, yeah. Anything else?
More football, more fun.
More football, more fun. Hit it here first. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed it, if you're watching on YouTube, please give us a like and a subscribe. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, please give us 5 stars. But yeah, thank you very much for your support.
Cheers.